Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year to everyone. We're going to start the meeting up. This is the January 11th Town of Fishkill Planning Board meeting. I'm Jonathan Cantor, Chair of the Planning Board, and I'll call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. So if you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone again, and welcome to the new year. Hope that 2024 is a good year. It should be. We are always optimistic. So I'll ask you all to silence your cell phones while in the meeting room, and everyone who's going to be speaking, please speak into the microphone so that everyone here and at home can hear you. Let's see, we originally were going to have a full board of voting members, but we have word from a couple of people who either may not make it or might be late. So at this point, I would like to appoint Kevin O'Connell, who's our alternate member here tonight, to participate as a voting member for the meeting. And that way we'll make sure we have a quorum. All right, well, let's start with our one public hearing that we have tonight. This is the Walmart MFC pickup expansion amendment to site development plan. At 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as possible, applicant seeks a site development plan amendment to construct a 7,234 square foot building expansion that will be used for the online pickup and delivery operations. The project will consist of the building expansion, associated parking, and proposed stormwater connections from the expansion roof. The building expansion will be constructed on the east side of the building. 45 parking spaces are proposed, already existing, but they're part of the existing Walmart parking lot, with reduction of 10 parking spaces due to the expansion and revised striping. There is no proposed increase in impervious coverage of the site. The parcel is located at 26 West Merritt Boulevard in the PSC Planned Shopping Center zoning district. Would somebody make a motion to open this public hearing? Fred moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Bob seconds it. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Let's see how many voting members we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That passes 6-0. All right, is the applicant's representative, Mr. Koger, here today?
Yes.
All right, would you come up and just please give us a quick overview before we invite the public to speak. This is just so that the audience here and at home has an understanding of what the project is about.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you for having me today, board members and chairman. I missed you guys last month. I wasn't able to attend. That's something else. Okay. Yep. Thanks for having me. My name's Travis Koger with Dewberry Engineers. We're the civil engineer representative for Walmart, and this project, as the chairman mentioned, is a building expansion for the pickup operations. If you're familiar with the pickup, you order online, you show up to the store, you press your button on your phone that says you've arrived, and they bring your groceries or whatever other items you order to your vehicle for you, so you don't have to go into the store. Since COVID has happened about 4 years ago now, the pickup operation has exponentially grown, and as part of this facility, we're proposing 45 parking spaces to be used solely for pickup operations. The building expansion will be an infill to that east side of the building, and the associated parking will also be on that east side of the building. The parking stalls for this pickup is about 12 foot width as opposed to the normal 9.5, 9-foot width, so that's why there's a reduction in parking, just for the larger parking stalls to be used for the pickup operations. It's a pretty straightforward project with the building expansion and additional parking spaces. If there are any questions from the public, I'll gladly answer any, but at this time, I think that's kind of the general gist of the project, is just that expansion and new parking associated with it.
Thank you very much. All right, at this point, could we see a show of hands from members of the public who may wish to speak at tonight's public hearing, if there are any? It does not look like there are. All right. So, seeing that no one is here to speak at the public hearing, I think I'll know what the answer will be, but I'll ask our attorney and engineer if the board should close the public hearing tonight.
Absolutely. I agree.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Let's see, Kevin moved it, I think, and then I think there was a second over there by Jody. All right, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Now we have 7 voting members, so that passes 7-0. Okay.
We didn't receive any email also, right?
Sorry?
We didn't receive any email also about this.
No. So the planning board classified this proposal, as I recall, as an unlisted action at the December meeting, and would be conducting an uncoordinated review under seeker. So I guess I would ask if it's appropriate for CPL to prepare a draft EAF parts 2 and 3 and a draft neg deck for the board's consideration at the February meeting.
Yes, that's appropriate.
Does that sound okay, Dominic?
Absolutely.
All right, is the board okay with that? All right, would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Jody moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Uh,
They can have it on that end.
Who was that on?
Bob.
That was Bob? Okay, thank you, Bob. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and then also, I think on the same note, it seems like it would be appropriate to prepare a draft resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval for the proposed amendment to the site development plan for the Walmart MFC pickup expansion, as well as a draft resolution for a floodplain development permit.
Yes, sir.
All right, so if we could have that, we'll authorize our attorney, Dominic Cordisco, to prepare that for the February 8th meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Felix moves it. Fred seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. All right, so I think we'll be all set to wrap this up at next month's meeting.
Perfect. Sounds good. Do you need, at this time, do you need anything from Dewberry or Walmart to prepare any of the documentation for the?
Well, for purposes of performance bond, we would just need an estimate of the site improvements, but not including the actual building.
So only the site improvements, so grading, asphalt,
Utilities,
anything
right.
outside, but not
Correct.
the building itself.
Correct.
Okay, absolutely. We can prepare that. And do you want me to send that directly to you, Mr. Bodendorf, or send it to Debbie?
Send
or
it to Debbie, please, yeah.
We can do that.
Best to go that route.
Sounds good.
And if you could get that to Debbie by the date before the February 8th meeting for submissions, what date is that?
24th.
The 24th?
Yes.
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely. We'll get that to you.
Great,
all right, excellent.
thank you.
Anything else at this time?
No, I think we're good.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you, you too. Okay, we have a new submittal for tonight. This is the Homeland Towers Communication Tower 73 Route 9, site development plan and special use permit. The applicant seeks site development plan and special use permit approvals to construct a personal wireless services facility, including a 150-foot monopole with a fenced equipment compound at the base of the facility. The parcel for this proposal is located at, as I said, 73 Route 9 and consists of 4.03 acres in the GB General Business Zoning District. We're going to be talking about referring the application to various entities, and the planning board will allow informal comments from the public after discussion of this application. And I understand from Debbie that the applicant has submitted the required application fees and escrow deposit. All right. Welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself and then give us a brief description of the proposal?
Sure, absolutely. Again, for the record, my name is David Kenny. I'm an attorney with Snyder & Snyder. I'm here tonight to represent the applicants, Homeland Towers and Verizon Wireless. As the chairman stated, this is an application for a wireless telecommunications facility with a 150-foot tall monopole to support the equipment for Verizon Wireless. It was identified that there is a significant gap in service in Verizon's network along this area of Route 6 and in the surrounding areas. So this facility is needed to fill in that gap in service.
I believe you meant Route 9.
Yeah, Route 9.
Route 9, I apologize. I had it upside down on my.
Yes.
Correct. It's along Route 9, the route that our property is located off of. Just to the north and the south of where our property is, as well as the east and west, there was identified a gap in service, so this facility is needed to fill in that gap in service in Verizon's network. It's also proposed to have co-location space. That's additional capacity on the tower for if there was other carriers that also may have a need for a facility in this area. So even though this tower is being designed for Verizon Wireless and its need, we are providing co-location space in case there are other carriers that may have a need. It would reduce the proliferation of towers they could co-locate here. And also as part of Homeland's business model, we do also offer space to the town and any emergency communication services in case they also have a need to locate emergency communications equipment in this area. Again, the application, if we can go through the plan real quick, we are located at the rear of the property. Just for some of you that may know, this property over here is one of the quarry properties. So we're at the extreme rear of the property, but the idea was to be strategically located so that we are as far as possible from the street, this being Route 9. And then we have two existing buildings on the property. So by locating the tower here, we get additional screening or coverage by these two buildings that will block the base of the facility and most of the ground equipment. So the tower has been located here, also with the idea of providing service, but again, we've tried to locate it in the least intrusive means possible to provide the service to the community. Because we're located in this extreme rear of the property, we will need zoning board of appeals variances for the project. So we would like to ask the board, how would it prefer us to review an application that does go to the zoning board of appeals? Would that be a concurrent review, or would you prefer for this application to go to the zoning board of appeals, complete that review, and then come back? I understand that this board may want to take a lead agency position, so just wanted to confirm exactly the mechanics of that referral.
Yeah, I think it would be basically a concurrent review, which would, at the appropriate time, the planning board would request lead agency status and circulate lead agency notices. But I think we have a little ways to go before we get into that aspect of it.
Absolutely. It was just a question and a matter of knowing we have other boards that have to review, just wanted to know the order of operations.
Yeah, I think process-wise, although it may not be totally clear in the law, which is a very long law and very detailed, that guides the planning board and the applicant in these cell tower or telecommunication tower reviews. I'm not sure if it's exactly clear what that sequence, is anticipated to be, except that I know there is, when there are multiple agencies involved, it does imply that the planning board should try to take lead agency status and coordinate with the other entities.
Oh,
So-
we wholly, support that. We just wanted to make sure we were aware of the process and knowing the timing. Debbie, is it possible we had another document in our submission called the view shed maps?
Sure, you just have to,
Sorry,
no, you can run the show at any time.
the view shed maps, number 6. So what a lot of people seem to be interested in whenever we propose these facilities are the visibility of the facilities. Was where you're going to be able to see this tower and how far away from this tower are you going to be able to see it. This is the first view shed map that we have. This is with a topographic map as a base layer, so it kind of shows you where the elevations are. Right here, you kind of, let me see if maybe I can zoom in. Oops. So right here, the blue shaded area is actually the area where we expect visibility of the tower. This is due to the topographic changes. We think that the surrounding properties, because of the change in elevations, they're actually going to screen most views of this tower. This little yellow dot right here, that is the proposed location. And then what we have around is we have these orange dots where our suggested viewpoint locations. What we'd like to do and what the zoning code encourages is we would like to conduct a balloon test. So what we would do is we would propose to float a balloon 150 feet high, about a 3-foot diameter balloon, usually colored orange or red so it's clearly visible. And we'll float at the same height in the place of the tower. And then we'll drive around to take photos to see if we can document the visibility of that balloon. The idea being if you can see the balloon, you may also be able to see the tower in that location, or at least the very top of the tower. So what we did is we had our visual analysis experts at Saratoga Associates prepare exactly these proposed photo locations. These are these orange locations. We did go up here. There was, I guess, a scenic area up here, so we took a viewpoint location. Again, it's not expected that we'll have visibility up here because there's no blue, but this is also a trust and verify process. So while our computer is telling us you're not likely to see the tower from those locations, we want to document that. And so what we have for the board here are proposed viewpoint locations, and we would like to discuss if there's any additional viewpoint locations that the board would like us to include in a visual analysis report or in this balloon test. Also, when we're doing the balloon test, we usually have a number or an email we set up so that even if at the day of you realize, oh, we wanted to get this additional viewpoint location, we can get it to our experts in the field and make sure that we're catching it. Because sometimes you'll drive around and you see the balloon and you didn't realize you'd be able to see it from there. So we want to make sure we give you that opportunity to document that. But
That's
as you
always-
can
yeah,
see,
that's good. That's a good thing.
but as you can see here, it's really very limited expected visibility, and the vast majority is in this quarry property over here. I think that has to do mainly with the change in the topography. That blocks most views of the tower. But again, we're going to do the balloon test to document that and confirm that.
And do you know off the top of your head, how close is the nearest off-site residential structure?
We'll have to go back to the plans. I can go back to the
Yeah,
plans.
I think I recall it's at least 1,000.
Sure.
I think it's
This
at
one?
least 1,000 feet from what I recall, but
Yeah, it wasn't very close, but let me just get the plan so I can confirm.
okay.
While you're pulling that up,
Sure.
how long does the balloon test last? Is that a day?
So we usually do it for a period of 4 hours. So we'll do it in the morning, and we try to do it on a weekend. That seems to be when most people are going to be at home and be able to view this. But that's something we can coordinate with the planning board. If you have a different time duration, we can work with that. If you have a different day that you would prefer us to float it on, we can also work with that. But generally, in our experience, usually like a Saturday in the morning between 8 and 12 or 9 and 12 or 9 and 1, those seems to be the better times. It seems that the winds generally pick up in the afternoons. So in the mornings, we usually have a better time with any wind kind of blowing the balloon out of place or anything like that.
Do you know if there's any residential area included in the blue
areas?
There was no residential areas included in the blue. That was pretty much limited to right across the street and to the, this quarry property that's right here. And it was about 1,050 feet to the closest residential property right here.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, 1,000.
So yeah, if you remember, the blue shaded area was really limited to right here. And there's a great change in topography around this property right here because it was dug into by, becoming a quarry. But again, we were going to do the balloon test so we can actually confirm that our computer's telling us the correct information. But we don't believe it'll be visible from any of the residential areas.
And at that 1,050 feet, are there a lot of residential area,
So
houses?
there's a street over here, Carroll Lane.
Yeah, that's what
There
we
are
were
there are a
talking
few
about.
residences over along Carroll Lane, but again, I'll go back to the view shed map. It does anticipate no visibility of the tower over in that section.
Could we have a viewpoint from Caroline?
Absolutely. So we have one right now at the front of Carroll Lane, but I do understand that the board just recently received a public comment letter. We can absolutely take a photo further up on Carroll Lane. We can take multiple photos there to document that. But right now, the Carroll Lane is, I believe, right around here. Again, the blue is not coming anywhere close, but we will make sure that we'll take extra photos from that area.
Yeah, Carroll Lane is interesting because although it's a dead-end road, it does rise in elevation as you go eastward, and it's almost that sort of, I'd call it the foot of a small mountain area, so that would be a thing to take a look at, yeah.
So, yeah, we absolutely can include that. And like we said, we did have a topographic map as part of the information for this. I mean, that is one of the main sources of whether or not you're going to have an obstruction of the visibility is land cover and change in topography. And just another response to that public comment letter that you received, a lot of members of the public may question whether or not this is RF radiation and whether or not that presents a danger. I would like to remind this board, and its council can also support this or make his own statement, but there is federal law that prohibits this board from basing its decision on radio frequency emissions or the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions. However, we don't like to end the story there, so what we have submitted as part of our application, part of our report, is an FCC compliance report that it studied the potential emissions from this tower based on a full build-out. So that's not just with Verizon, but that's assuming all co-located carriers are on the tower operating at max power. And even with that, it still has shown that the facility is 100% compliant with the FCC rules and regulations regarding radio frequency exposure. It's well below the threshold limit for radio frequency exposure. So it is, by all sense of the manner, as deemed by the FCC, a safe facility. And again, this is all predicted on worst case scenario, max power operating, full build out, which is unlikely to ever occur.
Just a quick question on the other carriers potentially. Are there any others lined up besides Verizon Wireless right now? Because that study you're mentioning does actually indicate some specific companies. So I'm just wondering if they're...
So there's no one that's actually given us a letter of intent or any specific. It's just we know based on, for wireless coverage, there's 4 main carriers that operate in the country. Verizon being one of them. The other 3 are T-Mobile, AT&T, and now some of you may know that Sprint and T-Mobile merged. As part of that merger, they were required to divest some of their spectrum to create the 4th carrier, which is now Dish Wireless. They're starting to deploy their infrastructure and their network nationwide. They're doing a nationwide rollout right now. You may see in the coming months advertisements for them, but our purpose is to make sure that we have space in case any of them also have a need. They could co-locate here rather than needing another separate tower.
Like some of the smaller carriers, do they sublease from like Sprint and the rest of them, so they're actually on their...
It's something like that. So what they generally do is they will lease spectrum from one of the companies. So they'll, like T-Mobile have an antenna and it provides its spectrum, its range of frequencies, so to speak, for its service. Some of those frequencies may be sold off to a sub-company like a Boost Mobile or another one of those small Mint Mobiles.
Yes.
So yeah, sometimes they do have their own antennas and do have their own towers, It's much less common. More common, and what I've seen is that they use the same antennas as the carrier they're subleasing from, so to speak.
Is the site that you're planning to put this tower on, is that an owned site by the applicant, or is that a leased site by the applicant?
It is a lease site. So it's,
Is the lease an annual lease, or is it a 30 or 40-year lease? Has the lease agreement been concluded?
so the lease agreement's been concluded. We provided a copy of the memorandum of lease as part of our application. I have a representative of Homeland Towers tonight. I wasn't the leasing attorney, so I don't know exactly the length, but I believe it's approximately a 30-year lease with some, some renewal provisions in it.
Okay.
But these are anticipated to stay here for a long time. It's very rare that a wireless tower has become obsolete or not needed. In fact, in my experience from the few years I've been doing this, you see more and more towers because as more and more people are using their cell phones, you just need more and more infrastructure to support that demand.
The key is that no one can really foresee the changes in technology over a 30-year period, over the next 30 years, right? So assuming continuation of current technologies, I would agree with you, but we don't really know what the technologies are going to look like 30 years hence.
100% agree, and I believe your wireless code does have a provision in to protect the village or protect the town from that, which would be a removal bond. So in the sense that the tower becomes obsolete, is abandoned, is no longer used, then a removal bond could be enforced to remove the actual tower.
It's like a reclamation type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but just in my experience, I've heard, again, for a long time now, my father's in the industry, about, cell phones being replaced by satellite phones. It's not likely to happen, just the technology. So when you are watching satellite TV in your house, you may notice if you have a TV in the basement and a TV upstairs, sometimes there's a difference in the timing. So if you're watching a game, the TV upstairs may be 2 minutes ahead, TV downstairs maybe 2 minutes later. That's due to a delay in the streaming, just the distance between the satellite and the user. So when you're streaming something and it's a constant viewing, the user really doesn't know the difference because you're still watching a continuous stream. However, when there's a call and response, like you're making a phone call and you're having communication, that disruption, that latency really kind of destroys the communication, so to speak. So it's very unlikely that it'll be replaced, but we can belt and suspenders and provide a removal bond in case there is a need.
Quick little question. I heard about the, for the FCC
Sure.
and everything about the waves and everything. Have they ever discussed what it does to wildlife?
So it's actually, the phrase is environmental effects of radio frequency. So they've studied the effect on the environment altogether, not just humans, but also wildlife and animals.
Getting back to the visual impact analysis, we have our consultants from CPL. John Bodendorf is our engineer, and Liz Axelson is our planner, and we're going to be referring this application to them to take a look through it and to give us some feedback as well as you on additional viewing points from which photographs would be taken. So we'll have a motion later on and after we finish our discussion to do that. But I just wanted to see, maybe Liz, do you have any initial thoughts or comments, especially on the visual analysis?
Yeah, so one of the thoughts, I think David's already referring to this, is that it'd be possible for this balloon test that's needed so that the applicant can prepare their visual analysis. It would be great if it can be a public balloon test, so it's fully publicized and people can go out and watch what happens. And I appreciate that you mentioned the fact that later in the day, even when winds are picking up, sometimes balloons kind of get blown to an angle and they're not as visible. But I think that is very helpful. The other thing is I am poised to have this referred to John and I. And so I haven't looked at any of the submittal materials. And I know that one of my priorities will be to take a look at the area and see what kind of issues there are on any mapping I can look at. I know that one thing that's of interest is that stretch of Route 9 is a gateway corridor for the town. And that was part of the adopted comprehensive plan update in May 2023. So that's another important aspect of there. It's kind of the whole corridor. And I guess, I mean, I do have other, things to touch on from the pre-app review, but I know I'll have a chance to talk about those things later. One thing that I'm very interested in, though, is to see if the planning board members have any viewpoints of concern that you might want to bring out now so that at least those can be made part of the whole analysis.
Or at least before the February meeting, which I think is when we're going
Is
to
that-
really have a full
Okay,
discussion about it.
then that's fine. That'll give
Which-
me some time to look, and then we can
Yeah,
discuss it
so,
more.
right,
Okay.
I had no intention of the planning board sort of signing off
good.
on viewpoints tonight.
Good.
And this also would give the planning board members a chance to go out and drive the area, take a look around, even go up to some of the surrounding hillsides, and then come back to the February meeting and, have a really good, thorough discussion about it then.
Agreed, and we 100% support making the public noticed balloon test, whether that be a posting on the town's website or any additional notifications. But we do think that there is a benefit to making sure the public is aware of the balloon test.
Is it just gonna, right now, is it just intended to be a typical triangular metal?
Yeah,
tower?
it's not a last tower, so it won't be triangular. It's a slender pole, but let me get the plans up.
But the antennas aren't interior, they're
Correct.
exterior.
They're exterior. It's a monopole, not a like a flagpole or one
Right.
of those.
How tall is the tower usually?
150 feet.
Oh, 150.
Again, so
15
Oh.
stories, 15 stories, basically.
That's tall.
Okay.
again, it's a line of sight technology, so the height of the tower is really determined by the height of surrounding vegetation and the height of the surrounding topography. So we do have to make sure that we're clearing the topography and clearing the trees, otherwise the signal will just be blocked. But again, so this is Verizon. They would be the top carrier. Again, this tower is being designed for Verizon's need, so we know Verizon needs at least this height for it to fill its gap in service. But based on our experience in the industry, we do believe that other co-locators will come here and go at the lower rad center and still be able to provide coverage to the area. The idea being they won't have the capital expenditure that Verizon has, so a second or a third carrier will come on. It'll be a little bit less expensive for them to come on because they don't have to build their own new tower. But they'll still be able to provide coverage in an area where if Verizon has a lack of coverage, it's speculative, but we can assume that other carriers also maybe have less than reliable coverage in this area.
So is that, what we're looking at now, that could be potentially the full rack system?
Correct. So like right now, it would be built with just this one, but if there was all 4 co-locators, that would be what it would look like.
And also, on the visual analysis, we've had a couple of these in the past several years, and it's very helpful to have, after the photos are done of the actual balloon flying, to go back and do photo simulations of what the actual tower would look like at that height, superimposed on the photo.
So I'm sorry if I was unclear before, but that is
Yeah.
100% our goal of doing the balloon test. Is
Yeah.
Our visual analysis experts are going to take those photos, and then we'll discuss with the board's experts which particular photos should have the photo simulations imposed, and then we can make sure that we have photo simulations so you have an accurate depiction of what the visibility of this tower would look like.
What will be the color of the tower? I mean,
It's usually a galvanized steel, so it's going to be a light gray. That usually works best because most skies are not pretty blue skies on most days, so a grayish kind of galvanized steel pole seems to blend in with the sky a little bit better. But coloring the tower, if you guys would like to paint it the high school colors, we're happy with doing that. We just, in our experience, we see the galvanized steel is less noticeable, but color is something that's definitely on the table for discussion.
And also, we've dealt with the question of camouflaging the towers And, you know, in some cases, it may be appropriate, in other cases, it might not. But that's, so one of the things we'll want to see is kind of some analysis of potential design approaches to the tower that, other than color, but other possibilities that might be able to, you know, help blend the tower in with the surrounding area to the maximum extent possible.
Absolutely, we can review those. We think with this particular location, because we showed it's such limited visibility, and most of the visibility is going to be on these industrial properties, we don't think that a stealth design will be of benefit, like a monopine as you're discussing. In fact, with a monopine, we generally have to go a little bit taller and a little bit wider, because now we've got to hide the antennas within the faux branches. So it usually adds additional mass into the sky, and unless you're in a very thick forest, they generally stand out, especially this being 150 feet tall, and surrounding trees will probably be 70, 80. But that's something we can explore. It's definitely something we can explore.
Yeah, there's one on Hudson River Parkway down here. Mamaroneck, it's famous.
Yes, it's called the Frankenpine, and I drive by it fairly often. So yeah. Sometimes they work, but you know, sometimes if you find the right location, less is more.
How far away are the towers?
I'd have to go through the.
Approximately.
Again, I have to go through the actual the RF justification report, but they probably are about a mile or so away.
Yeah, if I recall, there's one in Putnam County, somewhere in that mile range that you're talking about. I think that's in the alternative site study.
There's one across from ESP Building Supply in Phillipstown,
Yes,
above Ritchie Electric.
yes.
So here is the proposed site, this blue triangle, and these red triangles are existing Verizon Wireless towers. So for at least from the Verizon Wireless, these are the existing towers that I have in the RF justification for. As you may have discussed, the alternatives analysis would have also reviewed all towers, all tall structures that aren't just Verizon's. But generally, with this distance right here being a scale of about 2 miles, you'd have this one is probably about 1.5 miles away, and then you've got these probably closer to 2 miles away. But that is generally, it changes with topography, and it really does also change with density of population. So if you have more and more users in an area, they're going to sort of suck up the cell phone service before it gets beyond a greater distance. So if you have an increased capacity in an area, your cell phone coverage may, without as many users, go much further. But if you have so many users closer to the tower, they're going to use up all of the capacity of that service. So there's two things we always try to do with cellular coverage is one, coverage, which is physical land coverage area, and then also capacity, a amount of users that any one particular site can hold at any one particular time. As you may know, more and more users are using their cell phones for not just making phone calls, we're using it for streaming, we're using it for internet, we're using it, so all of these other things take up more data and they take up more capacity of the bandwidth of a cell tower. However, just in this general area, it's more likely that topography is keeping your cell towers within these 1.5 mile, 2 mile radius.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members? I have a number of things I want to go through myself, but I wanted to see if anyone has any other questions or comments before we get to some other things. All right, we can come back to that later. You might have some questions after I go through some of my things. So, yeah, I was just saying before, it's a very detailed and lengthy provision in our town code, section 150-126, telecommunications towers and personal wireless service facility requirements that the planning board and the applicant will have to follow. So, okay, this appears to be a type 4 application under our law. And I know we talked about this at our pre-application meeting. We will obviously have to make an official determination of that, but Dominic, have you had a chance to look a little bit through the law and see? I mean, it seems pretty clear because type 4 applications are things like this, which are cell towers, actual new towers, as opposed to a number of other smaller scale facilities. Do you want to kind of give a quick, brief description of the 4 types that you've dealt with and how that fits in with our regulations?
Sure. So my understanding is we would be a type 4 application based on your wireless code. I believe type 1 applications are co-location sites where it's already an existing structure and they're just co-locating on top of it. I believe then you also have a provision there for modifications of existing sites where you're increasing the height of the tower or you're substantially changing that facility. And then you also had what is known as small cell facilities or DAS, distributed antenna systems. So those are usually for areas that are a higher density population I was discussing earlier, where they're trying to provide additional capacity to an area that's maybe too many server or too many users in one area. Again, your 4th category is really everything else, new towers being included. So we would agree that we are a type 4 application.
Okay. Well, when we refer this to our consultants, we'll also ask Mr. Cordisco to take a closer look at the law and...
Well, I took a look at it.
Okay, so...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the real question is, and it's the elephant in the room that we haven't discussed yet, is the shot clock.
Yeah, yeah.
So the shot clock is, for a new tower application, which this clearly is 150 days under the Federal Trade Commission's Federal Communications Act, the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And what that really means is that the federal law provides that 150 days, which is 5 months, is a reasonable time for a municipality to consider and approve or deny, if the case may be, but consider and make a decision and issue a permit for a new tower application. There's even shorter time frames for such as things as co-location. But this particular application is a new tower, and so as a result, you essentially have 5 months from the time that a complete application was submitted.
Submitted or?
Submitted. Submitted. So the question is whether or not that shot clock is running right now.
Yes.
So under your code, the zoning administrator does an initial review and then refers the application to the planning board. That, however, would imply that the shot clock is running, but I think that we also have some issues that we could agree upon that would suggest that the shot clock should be tolled, and they are 2 in my mind. One is the fact that the balloon test and photo simulations have not yet been provided. I understand that the applicant is doing that because they want to work with the board and make sure that the public has a full and fair opportunity to have the best information in front of them. So that's why they didn't do it. It's not a criticism, it's just a fact. The other thing is that the location of this particular tower, as Mr. Kenny acknowledged, is going to require a variance, and so there's going to be a concurrent review in connection with that. The third thing is that this board's standard practice is to receive these applications first, have it on an agenda for a month, and then refer it to its board's consultants, so they don't have the benefit of having technical comments at this initial meeting. It effectively, in this situation, eats up a month because it hasn't been referred yet to Liz and to John. So as a result, what I would ask and suggest is that it would be reasonable to have an initial tolling of the shot clock at least until the next month's meeting, so that at next month you can also hear from your consultants, and perhaps I would also, as long as I'm kind of stream of consciousness here, suggest to the applicant that they submit a protocol for the balloon test as to how that would be conducted, how the public would be notified. There's also opportunities or situations, in my experiences, where it actually is too windy on a particular Saturday if it's supposed to be the Saturday for the balloon test. And so as a result, the balloon doesn't get floated. And well, what happens on that? Does it happen on Sunday? Does it happen the following week? And if so, how do you, if you've done a notice in the newspaper, how do you let everybody know that the balloon is now going to be floated on a Tuesday rather than on a Saturday, or whatever the case may be? And so all those things can be spelled out in protocol that everybody can see and understand, and everyone who's interested will also be able to have a good handle on what exactly is going to happen. For those reasons, I would suggest that, since you only have, by federal law, 5 months, which is supposed to be the time frame that you're supposed to make a decision within, that it would be appropriate to toll for 1 month period initially the shot clock.
So the shot clock, again, if we're discussing the shot clock, it usually means that the application's gone down a bad road or something like that. It's Homeland Tower's position. We'll always extend the shot clock as long as this board is reasonably reviewing the application and it's progressing along. I'll just confirm, do you have an objection with the 1 month tolling? We can absolutely do the 1 month tolling, but again, if even with this 1 month tolling, we get further into the application and there's a need for further extension, we absolutely can extend the application review period again. This is not something that we want to force this board to make a decision like that. Usually the shot clock is only coming up if it's clear that there's no more progressing of the application and that it's pretty clear that it's not being entertained reasonably. So from our standpoint, the shot clock should not be an issue. We agree to the tolling, and we can also extend the shot clock further if we get to that point and it becomes necessary. As far as the balloon test, we can absolutely provide a letter of methodology and discussions about how to notice. Generally, we would say in our notice, if it was to be on a Saturday, if in case of inclement weather, the following Sunday, and then we could discuss with the board how it wants to handle it if there's also inclement weather on that following Sunday, whether we wait to another weekend or whether we go to the next weekday. The only thing I want to put forth is a reason why we want to not expedite the balloon test, but maybe get to it a little bit quicker, is the leave-on season. So a lot of communities want to make sure when we do these balloon tests, it's during the leaf-off season, so that it's the worst-case scenario of visibility. As when the leaves are on the trees, you're likely going to have more coverage and less visibility through the trees. So we would just want to make sure that we try to target within that February, early March period, so that we're not running into the budding season and all of that.
Yeah, I think, I would advise the board that having this protocol for discussion at the February meeting would be advantageous, because you might be in a position to have the balloon test conducted before the spring season and leaves are back on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And-
I agree.
Can I bring up one other concern? Or
Yes.
do you want to go ahead?
No, please.
Okay. So the other concern that I have is that at CPL, we don't, to my knowledge, have anybody who is a radio frequency engineer who can review some of these technical reports. So one of the items that I think is important to get going on is to at least bring to the board in February some options for possible RF engineering consultants. And they would look at the radio frequency plots and examine all that material and give us confirmation on those or make comments, so to speak.
So could you bring us some possible
Yeah.
names that we could contact?
I already started looking.
Okay, great. I know we worked with an RF consultant with the Tarpon Towers proposal a couple of years ago. They're a Florida organization. We dealt with them remotely, which I hate. I hate that process. Although in today's modern world, I know that's often done, but it would be great if we could find like a regional, even a New York area consultant who might
There
be
is a
able to help
group
us.
that I believe has offices in New York and Georgia, and it's part of that same group, Cityscape. So,
Cityscape is one, Doug Fishman is another.
Oh,
that
good.
is also local.
Good, yeah.
Somewhat local. Mike Musso was also doing it, but I don't, and they were at H2M, but I don't believe that they're taking on new matters.
Good.
But perhaps since they have an existing relationship with the town, maybe
He said that, but I've seen him at a lot of applications recently.
Yes.
Maybe they're doing too
He
many.
keeps saying that he's not taking on more work, but he seems to be working just
I
fine.
think he lives in Fishkill too, but
Yeah,
that's another story.
Yes. So there's a number of different options.
If you can,
I would
yeah.
agree. So
All
I'd be
right.
happy to
So,
work with
yeah,
Liz on.
If you all could report back to the board on that, that would be great.
Sure. The other thing is that we touched on briefly was the concurrent review with the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Mhm.
It's my understanding that this board's practice is there's typically not a referral. It's just you make your application directly to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So if you want to start that process, I believe that you're entitled to. The question then becomes about the coordinated review. I would think that typically this board would circulate for lead agency. They may, depending on the information that from their consultants at next month's meeting, they might be in a position to authorize that or not. But, in any event, I think there would be a coordinated review. I would anticipate that there would be. But also, you don't have to wait in order to apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals to start that process.
Okay, great. I'll talk with my client. We maybe will supply the application to the ZBA early just so we can get them involved, or we may possibly wait till we get the balloon test and the visual analysis so they can have a full application, but I'll discuss with my client and we'll get to the ZBA shortly.
Well, aren't you going to do the balloon test based upon the variance?
No, the balloon test is based on just the visibility of the tower.
But isn't the tower going to, where you're going to put the balloon up where the tower's going to be?
Correct.
Therefore, it's going to be a variance for that tower?
Correct. So they will still be reviewing the variance, but the actual conducting of the balloon test to produce the VRA, that I believe is the final report that will give them the information about impacts related to that particular location on the property. But if you would like, we can absolutely go to them earlier. We don't mind. It's just we wanted to make sure we presented to this board first and discuss things like order of operations and balloon test and the fun stuff.
Now, the interesting thing is, so maybe first you could confirm with us exactly what the variances are. My understanding is that there are two variances. One would be a rear yard setback variance, and one would be a side yard setback variance. And I forget the exact, number of feet that are not being met, but if you have that available,
Yeah, I
that
was
might be
trying to find out what
good.
it is the variances that they need.
Actually, I might have written that down somewhere. If you give me a second.
Yeah, I have it right here. So we have a little bulk table right here that actually has
Yeah.
that exact thing. But you are correct, it is a rear yard and side yard variance.
Oh, I have it. The side yard setback is 30 feet proposed where 75 feet is required in the law.
Correct.
And the one for rear yard setback would be 42 feet proposed where 75 feet is required.
Correct. They're also on the board on
Yeah.
the screen. Again, the idea for locating it where we've located it, it was because we wanted to be furthest away from the street. Again, we are meeting that front yard setback, which is the height of the tower plus 50 feet. And we are also, again, we're trying to strategically locate it so that we can take the benefit of those two buildings that are actually existing on the property. So the way that those buildings are, I'll just show you. They're actually hopefully going to screen most views of the base of the facility because, again, you have this existing building here and an existing building here, and the tower's going right in between. So it adds to the screening benefit for the ground equipment. And again, we can design the tower. The tower, we have submitted a structural letter. Tower can be designed to collapse in on itself so that under a worst case scenario, again, these are designed not to fall down. They're designed the stringent, standard to make sure that even under a full build out, it's very unlikely that it'll fall down. But we've designed it we can design it with hinge points so that in the worst case scenario, if it does fall, you have a weak hinge point and it collapses in on itself and falls within the property lines. But again, the property that we are closest to that we need the setback relief from is an industrial property. It's that quarry property.
Yeah, those two buildings, are they occupied with anything, or are they just?
Correct. I believe those are buildings for the property owner. He has, I think, a workshop in one and a wood shop, I believe. Klaus, do you know? I don't know.
Interesting.
But they're, the uses that he has, he has a couple commercial uses on his property. Obviously, we don't want to fall on his building either, so we would design to make sure.
No, I'm just wondering that, now you have two places where humans are right close to a radio tower.
Agreed, but,
Yeah, no, it's.
No, understood, but the property owner did lease the property to us, so I think he agreed that, it would be a good location in this particular location.
So Dominic talked about the tolling of the shot clock. From my understanding in reviewing the law, there are really two basic procedures that can be used for tolling or extending the shot clock. One of which is really the tolling mechanism where the zoning administrator sends a notice of incompleteness. That's a weird term, but that's what it is, to the applicant if the applicant is deemed incomplete within 30 days of the town's receipt of the application. The other is, I think it sounds more like what we were talking about here, which is extension by mutual agreement, which is that the board and the applicant can agree to extend the shot clock based on aspects of the study, needing more time, such as the visual analysis that we were talking about. The thing about the 30-day time frame, which would end on January 20th, 2024, based on the submittal date of December 21st, 2023, is that it seems to be a much more formal mechanism to toll the shot clock if specific items are identified based on the law's list of 14 items that are required to make an application complete. And so I actually went through that list, and so the visual impact analysis was the first and foremost of them that I identified. There's also an aspect of the alternative site analysis that I felt was incomplete, which was that sites 1, 3, and 4 of the alternative site analysis did not include any documentation regarding follow-up communication with the owner's agents of those 3 sites, whereas the other sites did include more specific follow-up information. So that was another one that I had identified. I wasn't sure why that happened that way, but I don't know if you have any knowledge or idea of why that happened.
I don't have the specifics at the moment. I can look into that and get an answer to this board for the next meeting and discuss with my client. If there's a need, we can try to reach out and see if we can do a follow-up. But let me see if there were follow-ups and they just didn't make its way into the report.
Okay. And then the third one, which I didn't hear if Dominic mentioned this, but the estimate for cost of removal of the facility. I know that that's one of the required elements in our law, and the applicant was requesting that the board consider allowing that to happen later in the process, like
Correct.
at the approval process as opposed to at the application process. And I'm not even sure whether the board has the authority to waive that, but to me, I just thought that was an important item which wouldn't be very difficult to do to submit as part of the application itself. So I identified that as actually a third item. And then there's a fourth thing, which I'm not sure we could really consider an incomplete item because it's probably one that we need some further input from our attorney, which is the effective prohibition claim. So I don't even think we want to get into a long discussion about that tonight, but it's basically where the applicant was challenging the town's ability to require the submittal of an effective prohibition claim, which has to do with the gap analysis of, and to determine service gaps existing, and whether the planning board can require a drive test data to be submitted. So I know that's, again, that's something, I don't know if you want to talk very briefly about that, but I wasn't going to include that as an item of incompleteness. It's more of it's a question of whether, you know, if we can get some further input from you, Dominic, on that at some point, but I think we might need to have a conversation about that at least at some point, but I didn't really want to do that tonight. I just wanted to bring it up. But if you have, you know, a short version of an explanation about that, we'd
Sure.
be glad to hear it.
So it's just from a practical standpoint, effective prohibition is a claim under the Telecommunications Act that states basically a carrier cannot fill its gap in service based on the actions of a municipality. So just from a standpoint that this board hasn't acted yet, and we're just at the very beginning of the application, it's just impractical for my client to guess or speculate if there will be actions by this board that amount to an effective prohibition. But what we did state in there, which is I think what they were really getting at with this claim, is that even though we object to the requirement of a notice of effective prohibition, we do state that this facility is needed to fill a significant gap in service. So for that point, well, we do admit that there is a significant gap in service. The other aspects of the law, we've submitted some objections to.
And if I may, I mean, that
Yeah.
this is why the board would be well served to have an RF expert that reviews especially this aspect of the application, which is to confirm or not, you know, the need for the particular facility. So.
And we 100% support that. I think most boards in your position would hire an expert to go through the same things I ask my expert to explain to me.
Yeah. So, I know we've gone through a lot. At this point, I did want to see if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make informal comments about this proposal for the cell tower or personal wireless services facility at 73 Route 9. Okay, I see one hand. I see two hands. Okay, so what I'd like to do is, when I recognize you, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 4 minutes to speak. We also did receive a letter from a resident of Carroll Lane, and we have that on record. So, would you like to come up first? Yeah, please.
So you wanted my name, my address?
Yeah, please.
Bettina Utz. Do you need me to spell that for the protocol? No. I actually live in Phillipstown, right at the border of the Putnam and Dutchess counties, East Mountain Road. And I just have a few questions about this. So just to understand what the radius is of a coverage of a tower like that. And in that area, how many households are you actually trying to serve with this coverage? If there's already a tower a mile away, just out of interest to understand the application better.
Thank you. Okay, sir, would you like to come up?
You gonna answer that?
Well, we normally don't have back and forth answers, but after we hear all the questions, if there are more questions, we could ask the applicant to try to address that.
Good evening. My name is Ed Bushek from 238 Carroll Lane. I'm also the local administrator for the County Line Residents Association, which handles issues in southern Fishkill and northern Phillipstown, because the county line runs right through Carroll Lane.
Yeah.
We have 12 residential homes there with retired people, children, and we're very concerned about this, this tower. It's right on the road. I don't know if you know where this spot is.
Yeah.
You'll look over here. This is the gateway to Fishkill, which we're all trying to beautify. And in the coming weeks, we're going to be installing a flag post with a Betsy Ross flag at the historical monuments. This is with the assistance of the supervisor of Fishkill. And again, beautifying the gateway. So to have this, let me call it a monstrosity, because today I looked at 2 other cell towers. One is the one across from ESP, and it's up on a hill, and it looks like vultures hanging off there. I don't know if that's a cell tower. I believe it is. But this has a lot of things hanging off it. The other one that I looked at was down Route 9 near Magazzino. There's one of those large frankenpines, and you look over to the left going down south, and it's a monstrosity sitting in the forest. And that, I believe, this is not the first tower you've dealt with. And there's another tower proposal being proposed right now for near the Fairview Cemetery. I believe, is that Beacon?
It must be Beacon. It's not, it's not the town of Fishkill.
So, the proliferation of these towers is like an ongoing thing. I think the site chosen could be better suited a little further north. My neighbors have Verizon, they're fine. On flatlands and up on the hill, I'll be able to see this thing from my house. And my other neighbors will too. And I invite, you to come up and see it. And let me just take a look at my notes quick. I know I got 4 minutes here, so.
That's all right.
And you'll be getting this in an email too.
Okay, that'll be very helpful. Yep.
Yeah.
It's always good to submit written comments.
Is there any noise associated with this tower? Okay, we'll keep that question.
Yeah.
And the other thing is it's very close to some high voltage power lines that are right behind the historical monuments. And I'm surprised they would choose something that could interfere with, radio transmissions. Property values. This is going to affect all our property there. I remember I mentioned 12 residences. There's others in northern Phillipstown. And people driving by, anybody driving by Route 9 is going to see this thing. It's going to be towering over there. Plus the view shed of Fishkill Ridge is going to be marred by this. And yeah, I'm worried about noise pollution because there is some cooling systems and mechanical systems associated with these towers. And Phillipstown has spent years fighting the placement of some of these towers. So I'm looking back at past articles, and I've contacted both supervisors of Phillipstown and Fishkill about this issue and asked them for their assistance. I think that's enough for right now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So, well, before we ask you to come back up, are there any other people in the audience who would like to speak tonight? No? Okay. So, Mr. Kenny, if you could come back and maybe try to address very briefly some of the things that were
Sure.
brought up.
First one is I'm going to get to the coverage maps. So right here, this is existing coverage. I'll see if we can get a better base layer map for the next one, to better show the surrounding areas, but there are some streets around here. This is kind of the existing coverage.
The white area is existing?
No, so white area is lack of coverage. I was just about to get to that.
Okay.
Over here is the color chart. So blue would be negative 85 dBm. What we refer to that to as in-building coverage. That means the signal strength is strong enough to get inside a brick or a stick building so that you can actually have coverage inside the building. A neg 95 is what we typically refer to as in-vehicle coverage. So this would be a signal strength that's strong enough to get through your windows of your car so you can make a cell phone. And then neg 105 is standing outside and you can get coverage. So it's counterintuitive, it's negative numbers, so it actually, it's getting, as it gets weaker. What we have here, this is existing, so this is where we see the existing coverage levels for a 750 megahertz coverage. As I stated earlier, they have different frequencies, the carriers. 750 megahertz for Verizon is one of their, what they call the low band frequency. So this is the signal that's going to propagate the furthest. This is also, though, the signal that has the lowest amount of capacity. This is most likely your cell phone calls are being on this signal. They can be on the others as well, but this is what we call as like the low band signal. Here is our coverage that's filled in. Again, it's probably better to zoom in. So again, hit the wrong button. So this is Route 9 right here, as you can see. It is, and again, I'll see if we can get a more defined base layer map in the next one. But right here is Route 9. As you can see, there's spotty coverage up and down Route 9. And if you go to the next.
So blue is the best.
Correct. Blue is the best, and it's up here, but right here you have this blue is not connecting to this blue.
Yeah.
So what there is maybe a user would be handling this and that there's no cell coverage along Route 9 to hand off the signal to the next tower. So again, this is an area that our Verizon Wireless engineers has determined has less than reliable service or a gap in service. Here, what we're doing is we're connecting, and also the blue then extends on either side of Route 9 and providing the stronger signal strength of in-building coverage. Again, this is at the 750 megahertz, or what we call the low band.
Wait, that was your proposed?
So yeah, this is the proposed. So again, the idea is we're connecting and we're filling in the spot around Route 9. If you go up here, there's a lot of gaps in between here, and there's a lot of gaps on either side, and then a lot of the signal strength that is here on either side is not that in-building coverage where someone inside their home will be able to use a phone. As some of you may know, the trend for more and more younger people and other homes to abandon their landlines is only increasing. There's a study by CTIA that more than 50% of wireless households, more than 50% of households are wireless only and they don't have landlines, and that number is only increasing. So in-building coverage is a very important coverage because more and more users are using their cell phones as their only mean of communication from their house.
Does this 750 megahertz carry 5G?
No, so 5G is a technology. So it's not limited to a certain frequency band. So there are certain frequencies. We have like the 2.5 and stuff. So those are what we call high capacity frequencies. So this will have 5G, but not of the 5G that you've probably heard about, which is these high intense emissions and a high intensity of the signal. Those are usually for denser populated areas, but this will have 5G services deployed on it. I can get the RF engineer to give a little bit more detailed explanation than that, but it's 5G, but not the high capacity or high millimeter wave 5G. But again, here's, I guess, the before and after. The comments that we also had, regarding the visibility of the tower, again, I just have to point out that any statements regarding whether someone will be able to see this tower or not, there's no evidence to support that at this time because we haven't done the balloon test, but our view shed maps that we did put show the opposite, show that it's unlikely to be visible from Carroll Lane at all. But we did say tonight that we will add additional viewpoint locations from Carroll Lane so that we can document that. Although our computer reports are saying you're not likely to see the tower from there, we'll verify that in the field by actually taking photos of the balloon. Regarding noise, there is a generator proposed. However, the generator will only be used in the event of a power failure. When the power goes out, that seems more and more likely that people are needing their cell phones and their cell phone communication. So we do want to have a power supply or backup power supply in the event of a power outage. But it'll only be used in the event of a power outage. It may be cycled once a week for about an hour. We can schedule that during times that are, during normal hours of operation, so it's not 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that. As far as the equipment on the actual tower, it is not noise producing to an effect that anyone would be able to notice. The radios transmitters that are in there, they emit about 3 decibels levels at max. I don't know if you know, but right now I'm speaking at probably about 60 decibels. It's 3 decibels is almost inaudible. But again, we're more than willing to review that. And the surrounding uses around us are much more likely to be noisier than us, and we're more likely to drown out any noise that comes from our property.
The second part of my question was how many households you're expecting to serve with this?
So again, I can show you by the mapping area as far as the exact, I know. So I'll see if for the next submission, we can have a calculation of exactly those numbers.
How many people live there? I mean, is it just the drivers who pass through? That's kind of why I'm asking the question.
So it's both. It's for people who live there. It's for people who are traveling through the area. There's also several businesses that are located along here. There is I believe, a new hotel that's being built around here as well. So there are more and more uses other than just the people that are traveling on the road that we're trying to supply the coverage to. But as far as the number of homes and streets to be covered, I can see if we can have an additional submittal on that to kind of clarify exactly as far as local street names and number of houses.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you come up to the microphone so we could hear you.
I was wondering if there were any alternative sites for this, for a tower in this area.
Well, there was an alternative site analysis submitted by the applicant. Do you want to briefly describe that? There are no proposed alternative sites. This site was selected, my understanding, as the best and the proposed site.
Correct, and at this time, the only available site that we have a lease for. So the first thing that Klaus actually does, the regional manager of Homeland Towers, the first thing he does is he goes out in a review, and this is discussed in the alternatives analysis, existing tall structures or existing facilities where someone could co-locate the antennas on. So he reviewed to see if there was a potential to co-locate Verizon's antennas on any existing tall structures that would eliminate the need for the new tower. They reviewed in the visual analysis report, there was no existing towers that they could locate on that would fill in this gap in coverage. Verizon's either already located on the surrounding towers or the other towers or other structures are located physically too far away to actually provide coverage into this area. Then, as the chairman discussed a little bit earlier tonight, they did review other alternative properties in the surrounding area. They sent out letters, they had sometimes discussions with them. Sometimes the reason for passing on to a property was because they just didn't respond to us after attempts, or it was because there was no ability to obtain a lease for that property, couldn't decide on a location or couldn't decide on lease terms. So this particular property at 73 Route 9 at the Lysticos Realty property, Lyscatos, thank you, Debbie. They were able to find a location on their property that would actually hit the main objective, which is, again, of course, filling in the gap in service. Then, as Klaus reviewed, there was areas on the property that would also help screen the base of the facility. Again, that's why we've located it between those two buildings. And it does seem to be in an industrial area of town with the surrounding uses being industrial. It would be a facility that truly presents a least intrusive means to filling in the significant gap in service. So alternatives were reviewed. This is, at the time, the only available alternative, but we'd also submit that it's the least intrusive.
All right, and then we'll just repeat that we did receive that letter from Natalie Beglin, who's a resident on Carroll Lane as well, expressing her opposition to the proposed cell tower for the reasons she stated in the letter. Well, so as I mentioned before, the law that we're working under indicates that the planning board can either declare the application, well, to determine that the application is incomplete and request that the building inspector, zoning administrator send a notice of incompleteness to the applicant, thereby tolling the shot clock period, or the planning board can request consent from the applicant to extend the shot clock period beyond the applicable 150-day tolling period. My feeling is at this point, since we can identify at least 3 specific elements that are listed in the law required for completeness, to go through that first procedure, which is really tolling the shot clock within that 30-day period. So that possibility could be accomplished tonight, actually, by making a motion in which the planning board would find the application to be incomplete for the reasons that we discussed regarding the visual impact analysis not being completed and submitted yet, the alternate site analysis being incomplete with additional information requested, and the estimate for the cost of removal of the facility not being submitted, in which case we could request that under the actual procedure in the law, we could request that the town zoning administrator, building inspector, prepare and send a notice of incompleteness to the applicant to notify the applicant that the application is incomplete, and to mail that notice so that it would hopefully be received by the applicant by January 20th, which would be that deadline. So that would be my preference, I think, with it's kind of a more formal tolling process, and it would allow us certainly to work and, you know, spend as much time as the applicant needs to prepare the visual analysis in particular. I would assume that the other 2 items are things that could be prepared pretty quickly and certainly submitted in time for the February meeting. But I think the visual analysis is the big one, the big item that we definitely would like to work with and coordinate with the applicant on. But I just personally feel that the better way to do that would be through the formal tolling process. So just, I wanted to get some feedback from the board on that, and if you know, also maybe look to, we heard from Dominic, if you have any other thoughts on that, Dominic, but also if our consultants from CPL would like to weigh in as well, we can just kind of go around the room and see what people think.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
I mean, you know, obviously, I would prefer the formal option, mainly because CPL hasn't even had an opportunity yet to review this, and we do want to get a jump on it and work with the timeline, but it's also possible that we may have a number of comments that would need to be addressed. I would hope to try to turn around a review as soon as possible, mindful of these timelines. So I would prefer that just in terms of the record of the planning board's procedures.
Any further thoughts, Dominic?
Yes, I don't recommend this course of action, and the reason being is it's inconsistent with Section H of 150-126, which is the planning board's initial review, which is where we're at, because the building inspector has already transmitted the application to the planning board for its initial review, and the applicant has offered to toll the shot clock. So I think the danger in this course of action is that by referring it back to the zoning administrator, first, there's no procedure for that in this code. But secondly, it presumes that the zoning administrator would agree with you that the application is incomplete. He may or may not. He's already sent it to the planning board. And in any event, the applicant has on the record agreed to extend the shot clock not only for this month, but additional time as may be necessary. So with that said, I think you're at 150-126H, which is the planning board's initial review, and that actually states that the planning board shall conduct an initial review and then move to establish itself as lead agency. That would be the appropriate next step for the board to consider, in my opinion.
I'd like to go into closed session to get further advice from our attorney. I was going to do that later in the meeting for a different matter, and I would still like to do that, but I'd like to go into a closed session right now to talk further about this with our attorney. So,
May I make one statement before you do that, very short?
Sure.
Just if the decision is for the notice of incompleteness, the only item that, and this is academic because I'm more than willing to extend the shot clock, that I would object to as being deemed incomplete is the alternative site analysis. What your comment is a comment on the actual report itself, not that it was not submitted. I believe the incompleteness determination is whether or not an item has been submitted. This has been submitted, and you have comments on it, and we have to review those comments. But that is the purpose of the whole 150-day review period. It's not until the application is complete to your satisfaction, but when we've submitted all of the items that are required under the code. However,
Okay.
I hope this is all academic because I'm more than willing to extend the shot clock. We don't want to have that being a forced-on decision.
Okay, understood. And if we do go the route that I'm thinking about, we could certainly scratch that item, that second one that was on the list. So
Again, I think this is all academic, but understood.
yeah. Well, there are some other reasons that we don't want to get into in public session that have to do with the process that Dominic was talking about. So,
Sure.
So I would like to see if there's a motion to go into closed session to get further legal advice from our attorney.
I hate to do this, but what reasoning are you going into closed session for?
Well, to seek legal advice from our attorney. It's not an executive session.
Okay.
It's a closed session to seek legal advice from our counsel.
Okay.
If there's a motion?
You must know something we don't.
Well, I think you know, but I'll bring it up. We don't want to discuss it now. If we don't want to go into the closed session, then you don't have to make a motion.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
second it.
Jody moves it,
Try to
Felix
keep it
seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, so
Right, brief.
this won't take very long. If we could clear the room and also turn off the broadcast and the taping for now. We'll give people a second to. Several board members that we need to speak up really well into the microphone so that they can hear us. So, okay, so I think we got the information we needed from our attorney, Mr. Cordisco, and so there was a consensus that we should go with the suggestion of working with the applicant on mutually agreeing to extend the shot clock without going through that more formal procedure. Dominic, do you want to sort of go over the details?
Yes, there's a concern that because, for several reasons, and one of them being the fact that there's a submission of a protocol in connection with the balloon test and the visual analysis, all of which, remains outstanding as an open item. There's also the request that the cost for the removal of the facility be included as well, and the fact that the board at this point does not have an engaged RF consultant. That 1 month extension was actually not sufficient, even though we anticipate that you would be on next month's agenda. So what the board would like would be a 3-month extension of the shot clock just for tolling purposes. And it would ask that that should be time to resolve and also have the review of these items, not only by the board's consultants, but also by hopefully an RF consultant as well in that time frame.
So is their request, again, not an extension, but that tomorrow, so to speak, we toll the shot clock, or today, so to speak, and then 3 months from there, it'll be restarted?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I mean, unless it's extended further based on information at that time.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
We can have further extensions. I just want to understand the first mechanism. Let me
Yes.
just ask my client real quick.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
So what we can do, if you'd like, I think we have to reduce it to writing, so I can send you an email just to, record the agreement that we're doing tonight, and when we can put a date to it.
You have my email, David.
Absolutely. Just want to let the board know. We'll send an email, and we'll do it that way.
Yes, and the other thing that I suggested to the board was that for next month's meeting, assuming that the additional information is being provided, was also to prepare a draft of a notice of intent for taking lead agency, because that's one of the next steps that the code specifies. And so that they're not circulating for lead agency today, but they would be in a position to consider doing so at the next meeting where you're on the agenda. We're assuming that you're going to make an additional submission, timely for the February meeting.
We can absolutely do that. And then, Debbie, did I hear, was it January 24th?
Yeah.
Can I suggest that the email to Dominic be copied to Debbie?
Oh,
Absolutely.
I copied Debbie on everything.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll
And I will
make sure
send
to
it to
copy.
you as well, Liz. Yes.
Yeah, normally we send everything through Debbie anyway, so, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then just one final thing, there was a comment earlier regarding, where the location is. It's right on the screen right now. This is a little bit of a narrative that explains where the service is being provided and along Route 9. Again, this is some of the streets right here. And then really right here, they're talking about this stretch of Route 9, and they have some average daily traffic, and it's about 18,000. So again, we'll see if we can get additional information regarding numbers of homes, but this is a little bit of a narrative that helps explains what those maps are trying to show.
This is a real picky little thing, but when I was reviewing the alternative site analysis report, on page 1, it states in the opening paragraph that there's a significant gap in service throughout this area of the town of Fishkill, in this vicinity and along Route 52. I think it should have referred to Route 9, which is where this service is actually occurring.
I believe that's a typo, and they confused the town's address.
Yeah.
We'll have that corrected.
Okay, so hopefully at the February meeting, we'll be able to move ahead with the seeker classification and lead agency notice. We'll have, okay, we're going to ask, in a minute, I'm going to ask for a motion to refer this application to our consultants formally so that they can have a chance to review the materials, and in particular, at this point, focus especially on the visual impact analysis and the viewing points for the balloon study, so that they can provide us with some feedback at the February meeting on that, and also to come back with some suggestions for an RF consultant so that we can start moving ahead on that. So I think that's where we are now. So I'm just wondering, I'm going to ask for a motion for referring the application. At this point, are we in a position to refer it to the full group of agencies that are listed in the agenda? I mean, I don't think we're ready to send it to the county yet, right?
That's up to the board. If you send it to the county, they're gonna go through their law and you may lose the 30 days, so that's up to the board, right?
Yeah, I would suggest that you wait until next month, because it's
Yeah.
referring to the county. If you're in a position to circulate for lead agency, you're probably also in a position to send to the county as well at that time.
Yeah, what I was originally thinking, and maybe this would be the approach, would be to ask for a motion to refer the application simply to our town engineer, town planner, and town planning board attorney. I know you as the attorney have already taken a look at some of it, but I think it would give you an opportunity to look, a little bit closer at some of the stuff and hold off on the full referral to the county planning and the State Department of Transportation and Rombout Fire District and the town of Phillipstown Planning Board until we have, I think they would probably appreciate seeing the whole visual analysis when that's done. That's something that I think most people are interested in seeing. So can I have a motion to simply refer the application for this Homeland Towers Personal Wireless Services Facility to the town engineer, town planner, and town planning board attorney for their review and comment?
So moved.
Okay, Felix moves it. Fred seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes 7-0. Okay.
Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you in February.
Thank you very much.
No snow.
Yeah.
See you back
Yeah, I need to notice that.
too.
Take care
Oh.
of this.
What's next?
Yeah.
Mine next.
Yeah, sorry. I forgot to mention, Kevin, that since Anthony is back, you're not a voting member at this point.
Okay.
Okay. And the next project review actually is going to be yours anyway, so.
Okay.
No, we don't want you to read Anthony.
Good evening.
Hello there. All right, so the first project review tonight is the O'Connell lot line realignment. Board is to review and consider a draft resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval. And so I see that Mr. O'Connell has, as the applicant, or one of the applicants for this proposal, has already removed himself from the dais and is sitting in the audience. So basically, we have a draft resolution here that was prepared by our attorney, Mr. Cordisco. And Dominic, if you would like to very briefly go through that, that would be great.
Yes, so you should have in front of you draft number 3. It's dated January 6th. This is a resolution granting both preliminary and conditional final approval for the O'Connell and Eastern View Developers lot line realignment. And this goes through the procedural status of this matter. Just to remind the board that this is a type 2 action, so no action is required under seeker. It's fairly standard at this point where we've been developing these drafts of resolutions, and for lot line realignments, the conditions are actually very straightforward. The owner's consent block has to be signed, surveyor's certification has to be signed. It has to include the signature block, the approval block for the planning board chair's signature. There are deeds that are required that together with meets and bounds descriptions conveying the portions of land, and then also separate deeds that then combine the transferred property into the overall parent parcel as well, along with notices that's with language that's included in particular that has to be included as those deeds. They have to be submitted as part of the application prior to signature. And fees have to be paid. It's a fairly straightforward process. and a fairly straightforward application, I might add.
There's only one thing that I ask. If on page 2, the second whereas in A, that the second 2 sentences kind of refer to improvements to a new building lot, whereas the first page, you know, expresses that we're not creating a new building lot or anything. There's no infrastructure or anything, but this refers to a lot of infrastructure. That's the only.
Thank you for catching that. So that is on page 2 of 5.
The last 2 sentences.
That's correct. That's correct. And they were a holdover and they should be deleted. No objection. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions on that with that one change? All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve and adopt the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval for the O'Connell lot line realignment as reviewed and revised tonight, and to authorize the chair to sign it?
So moved.
I think Jody started with the motion, and then Bob will second it, right?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you, too. Okay, moving right along. We are now at the Star of Bethlehem Baptist Church Site Development Plan and Special Permit. Board to review and consider a draft resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval. So again, Dominic has prepared a draft resolution for us. If you could quickly go through that.
Yes. Once again, the application, or the resolution is draft number 3. It's dated January 6th. Thank you, Debbie, for circulating them to the board. Appreciate it. Once again, the resolution goes through the procedural status of this application and all the steps that were taken, and also that this is a type 2 action under seeker, so no further review was done or required for environmental review. I'll jump right into the conditions. There was a specific condition relating to signage. Should I stop? Yeah, because it seems that they may have information for the board.
That's up to you, John. That's not normally the way we do it.
No,
Well,
I think another way to do it is to, well, let's see, what is the wording on the signage?
Yes, so this is what I said, was the project sponsor has not submitted details regarding to the proposed signage for the project, which is true prior to this meeting. Any and all signage proposals must meet the requirements of the town code for signage and shall be subject to the review and approval of the planning board. No approvals granted or intended to be granted for any signage associated with the current project. So once the project sponsor has settled on a sign layout, colors, and sizes, the project sponsor shall make an application in accordance with the provisions of the Town of Fishkill Town Code relating to signage. Approval of all signage and sign details as may be required shall be obtained prior to the planning board chair affixing his signature on the development plan and prior to the construction and installation of any signs. So if the applicant has sign details which they would like to present, my suggestion would be is that they submit them and the board could review them and consider them at next month's meeting unless you want to review them now.
What is the board's feeling about that? I mean, we try to follow our process and procedures very closely and not stray from them. So there was a submission deadline for submitting materials. I think we had asked for that at the last meeting. So that really should have been submitted by whatever the submission deadline was for this meeting, which is now 15 days ago or something like that. It's very difficult for the planning board to be handed something at a meeting and make judgments about it, and So.
Yeah,
what's the
I mean,
board's-
my suggestion, right, my suggestion would be to proceed with the resolution as written, because the board could certainly consider this and consider the signage at the February meeting, you know.
Yeah, so that way you'll have the approval, but you'll still be obligated to bring back to submit the sign details to Debbie now, or, whenever is the
It's
soonest.
gotta come through the process, I have to have it
Yeah.
electronically, I have to have, it's gotta
Yeah.
come through the mail. I hate to be that way, but that's the way it has to be.
No, that is the
But
procedure.
but that also would not hold up the approval, which the board
Right.
previously,
It just means.
authorized.
Right, it just means that you would have to come back presumably to the February meeting once again to go through the sign details. And I guess, I don't know, would we have a separate resolution just on the sign? I guess we could almost do that just by a motion at the meeting.
I think so. I think everybody would be clear if the board's in a position to approve the signage at that time.
Okay, is that okay with everyone?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, anything else in the resolution you wanted to go over?
Only regular standard conditions regarding the consent note from the owner, the approval block, the requirement that all fees are paid. The applicant also has to be responsible for maintaining the entire site to prevent unsightly accumulation of trash, debris, or other discarded items, standard things. Limitations on usage is only, that's what's shown on the site development plan is allowed to be used on the site. And the binding effect that this resolution is binding on the applicant as well as anyone else that would take over the site if that happens in the future.
Yep.
There was a question regarding the drainage going off the property. Was that ever put in? Was that ever solved? I know that they had a meeting, or supposedly had a meeting, but it was brought up to us.
Yeah, I think the applicants reported back to us on that. Do you want to repeat what you told us at I think it was the last meeting?
Yes, we reached out to the homeowners association at Roundabout Village, and we asked them what type of remediation they've had in the past for this problem, and what would they like us to discuss going forward. But that still is in a
Limbo.
communicative status as of right now.
Yeah, they think it's because of the parking lot. We need to know, is it truly because of the parking lot? Is it something else? And then what can we do to work together towards something that makes sense for both of us?
So it's not resolved.
Yeah. And again, that's, it's in a sense, a pre-existing condition because these applicants are now occupying and using the property that was previously developed without any changes to the site.
That's
So
correct, and there's no requirement for any stormwater maintenance or stormwater facilities as part of their application. They're not proposing any modifications to the site, as I recall.
So hopefully this will become a good neighbor working relationship where the new occupants of the property will work with the neighbors to try to figure out what's going on there and hopefully
We hope so.
figure out a good solution for both. So, any questions on anything else in the resolution? All right. Would someone like to make a motion to approve and adopt the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval for the site development plan and special use permit for Star of Bethlehem Baptist Church located at 37 Lamplight Street as reviewed tonight, and to authorize the chair to sign it?
I make the motion.
Fred moves it. Is there a second?
Second. No,
Pete.
let Jody have it.
All right. Jody seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries 7-0. All right, thank you. And so again, if you can submit the signed detail to Debbie as soon as possible, and then we'll see you again at the February meeting to very briefly take a look at that and
Will
hopefully.
do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And the next, and I think the final review for tonight. Yeah.
Right, if you couldn't figure out which application we were here for, right? It's,
So for the public's edification, this is the 21 Westage Radiology Center, amendment to site development plan. Board is to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on December 27th, 2023. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board.
If you could just kind of summarize what your revised materials were all about.
Sure. Again, I'm Jeff Kane with Kirchhoff Acquisitions. Based on the comments that were received from the board and the reviewing engineer and Dutchess County, we provided updated plans related to their comments, updated the parking table, added additional grading information, more information on the utilities, details, some construction details related to those utilities. Updated information related to the lighting and the landscaping included. We added a bike rack, bench, confirmed that the building mounted lights are dark sky compliant. We clarified the elevations. There was some question about whether or not the materials were reflective or not, and again confirmed that they weren't. We clarified the signage. Again, don't have a signage plan, but the signage we showed is in an area that'll conform to the town standards, and again, once the signage package is completed, that would be a separate submittal to the town. I have representatives of our architectural engineering team here with us today to answer any additional questions or comments that the board may have. But I'll keep it that short, and again, answer any questions that the board would like us to respond to.
Good, thank you. I see we have a memo from CPL. It's a very short one. Do you want to very quickly go through that, John?
Yeah, sure. We basically just asked them to provide the size of the roof drain pipes on the plan. And the only other comment we had, because there are some modifications to the utilities, that they coordinate with the appropriate utility owners during construction.
And John, I would just add that it was hidden because I found it though. In the legend, it says it's a 6-inch roof leader drain. So you had to.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, right. So we hid it, but it is on there. But we'll call it out separately. So
that would be helpful.
It would be helpful to the contractor, not just you. I think that would be. We'll make sure we do update that. So
thank you.
Okay. Any questions or comments from board members?
I have a couple.
Okay. Go ahead, Jody.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I have to try to think of how to word this so that everyone in the audience can also understand. It's where the person walks in is concrete, correct? That they're going into a concrete
vault, right? Is that what you're looking for? Right. Okay.
Concrete vault.
Let me just, sorry. That's where the treatment is. It's not. You said entry. I just wanted to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
The person who's being treated will go into the vault.
They'll go into the vault. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The vault is made of concrete.
Yes.
The radiation that's in there, can the concrete absorb that radiation?
Yes. Two things. Well, one, the concrete as designed will be somewhere between 2 and 4 feet in thickness. That design is confirmed by a physicist who is part of the development team to confirm that you don't have radiation fleeing the site. So absolutely, that's a big concern because it doesn't just go out; it also would go into the building and impact staff as well. So that whole report is to make sure you don't have any radiation escaping that vault. So yes.
Okay, so now let's just hypothetically say something happens and we need to remove a piece of concrete, whether it cracks and it has to be taken out or something. Is that concrete safe to be moved?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't believe the concrete holds that the radiation. This is not. I don't think it's the same type of radiation you'd have at like a decommissioning of Indian Point. It's a different type of radiation that you'd have in concrete. So
question.
yeah, I've never heard of that being an issue at all. We'll try to find an answer for you that we could bring back.
I
but don't think
understand,
there's any issue.
because I've done a little bit of research and I'm hearing, stuff out in the community with regards to radiation. And I know it's a different type of radiation, but there's a half-life, so I'm not sure, like, at some point, is the half-life a year, 5 years, 1,000,000 years? I'm not sure how, if there is, God forbid, some sort of a situation where we need to remove a piece of that concrete for whatever reason, is it safe to be moved, or does it have to stay there?
Yeah. No, again,
Okay,
it's
you'll
just the
find
insert,
out.
right? It dissipates, and yeah,
Okay.
it's. I'll confirm, but I've never heard of it being an issue in all the medical work that I've done in other imaging facilities. Never had an issue like that.
But it doesn't mean it won't happen, and
No. I mean, in terms of
understand.
it being lingering in the materials.
I get it,
I've never
but-
heard of that being an issue, but we'll see what we can chase down. Yeah.
Okay, please understand, my job on this board is to address the concerns of the citizens and make sure that they understand, too, what's happening in our community.
Sure.
Is there
And I
any-
appreciate all your answers.
Yeah, no, good.
Thank you.
And again,
Even if you have to research it
Yeah,
and get
right,
me an answer, I appreciate it.
I've looked to our architect here, Matthew Tether with Liskell McCormick, again, a lot of medical work in the past, and Matthew, I don't know if you have any to add there, other than you've not seen it either, but that's.
I want to follow protocols now, an appropriate time for you to respond.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Yes, if you have a response, certainly.
Okay, so thank you for your question. Bottom line, we'll get you an authoritative answer, chapter and verse. Okay, so that said, with radiation, we do hear about things like power plants or something where there is radioactive material that needs to be disposed of appropriately. At the same time, we go outside and you might get a sunburn from solar radiation. That's also radiation, but there's nothing in there that needs to be taken care of and disposed of appropriately. So there's a good answer out there. We'll get that for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is there, other than the concrete, you're not using any lead line, sheet rock or anything to mitigate?
Not here. There are lead line walls in the CT and the MRI both, right? So they will have lead here. I asked the same question because I'm used to lead lining as opposed to concrete, and for this particular machinery, the concrete is the preferred method instead of lead lining. But it's
Okay.
you're on the right path. But it's based on that technology.
Jody, any other questions? Okay.
At this time, no. Thank you.
No, I mean, I had the question last month about removing parking, and I saw the applicant provided an explanation of the need, so I thought that was very helpful in explaining why there would be no change, so no further comment, but I did want to bring it up because it was a comment I had.
Right. And, yeah, I looked at that, and I looked at the site plans, and the elevations look fine to me at this point with the revisions and explanations that you've provided. Anyone else at this point?
To the opposite of her, like, I think it's a much needed thing, because you have to go pretty far to get this kind of stuff, so it's a much needed.
To a place nobody wants to go to.
I know, but
Right.
you need it, you need it.
Right, you need it.
Yeah, and I think Jody's questions were good, and I don't think they were in any way implying that it wasn't a good facility. I think it's something that's good to ask questions like that.
No, and certainly we didn't take it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah, no,
My
I was more responding to the way Bob sort of phrased his comment.
So for the
Yeah.
next one, you're ready.
Yes. Anyone else with any questions or comments?
Thank you, Jonathan, for clarifying that, though.
So I do remember that we classified this as a type 2 action at the last meeting, so there's no further seeker review required. What about scheduling a public hearing for the February 8th meeting? I think we're probably there.
Oh, yeah.
Anthony's nodding, you want to make a
I'll make that
motion?
motion, yeah.
I'll second it.
All right.
Hasn't read the
Let's do
motion
it.
yet.
This would be to schedule a public hearing for the February 8th meeting at 7 PM or as soon thereafter as possible. So Anthony moved it.
Still do.
Who seconds
I
it?
do.
Felix seconds it?
I feel it's still second.
Still.
Still seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that public hearing is scheduled by a vote of 7-0. So we need signs for the public hearing. Any thoughts on how many and where?
10.
Two should be enough, right? Two or even one.
What did Fred say? What did Fred say? Speak into the microphone.
I said 2 signs, one out front on Route 9.
Yeah,
Mhm.
two should be
the entrance,
enough.
And then one near the building.
You're not just talking to him, you gotta talk to them.
2 signs.
2 signs. I was actually, how about this? I was even thinking 3 maybe. All right, listen, hear me out, hear me out. One at, as you said, out at Route 9 at the intersection of westbound Wested Drive with Route 9 is
Yeah.
more precise. A second at this, hold on guys. A second at the site entrance on the eastbound Westedge Drive. And a third at the site entrance on what's called Westedge Business Center Drive. So that's the 2 different frontages of the site.
Yep.
Yeah, you're talking almost right where the steakhouse is, right after Chipotle's, like right there, or further out towards, like, you know.
Well,
Right, so here's on the map, if you could help, right just here,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
talking about one
Thank you, Jeff.
here,
There you go.
So that's
One
out
here?
at Route 9. That's it. Let's see.
The left one is the Route 9 one, okay, right?
so here's, so one here, you're talking about at the access, this is the access back to the hotels, right? So,
Right there.
right, one right there. You're talking, then one back here? Because here's the pond is
Oh, that's the
back here.
pond.
Pond is here, so then one at this corner, is that the second one? Or-
Well, where is the site entrance on that side?
So the site entrance is back here, like if you take this down, it takes you back to the other medical office buildings back here.
Yeah,
so-
medical. West.
Yeah, I was thinking one at that site entrance.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay,
One at the other site entrance.
one here,
And then one out at Route 9.
Route
one
nine.
out of Route 9 on Westage at the stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
okay,
Yeah.
Sounds
Yep.
good.
okay. You got that, Debbie?
Yes.
And then, okay,
I
let
will
me,
send you a packet next week, no worries, Jeff.
yeah, exactly. And then, should we ask our attorney to prepare a draft resolution, assuming that the hearing goes well, and that we'd be ready to review a resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval for this proposal at 21 Westridge, for the board's consideration at the February 8th meeting?
Are you asking my opinion? Sorry. No.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Would you like to vote on it?
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm being given an actual option.
Do we have a motion on that?
I'll make that motion, and I bet no one shows up.
Fred moves it. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Anthony seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, hearing no abstentions, that passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Actually, interestingly enough, there was some other proposal. It might have been for the previous restaurant even, I can't remember. But there was somebody residing in one of the hotels.
Yeah, that's
who
correct.
came to a public
Yes,
hearing.
absolutely correct.
The previous restaurant.
Yep.
They were upset.
Then it closed, or did not?
No, they were upset
About
that
the
it was gonna
application.
be a restaurant again, and it didn't fit with the character of the town. It was really bizarre.
It was very bizarre.
You would think someone living in a hotel would appreciate having restaurants nearby.
I know.
Well, be prepared.
Well, right, I'm prepared for somebody who's living back in the dumpster area, who's going to, right, actually living on the site there. That's,
Oh, we won't go there.
yeah, right.
All right.
All right. Well, thank
Okay.
you. We appreciate you considering that for the next meeting, so.
Okay.
Next Tuesday, you'll have it, for sure.
Any
All right.
questions then that we can answer tonight? Okay.
I
Thank
think
you
we're all
all.
set.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right, we have one item under other business, and that's the appointment of a planning board vice chair. So it's that time of the year. So, of course, one of the main duties of the vice chair is to exercise the duties and powers of the chair in the absence or disability of the chair. That includes running a meeting if the chair is not able or present. So Anthony has served as vice chair for the past almost 3 years, I think.
Has it been that long?
I think so.
Yes, sir.
And I did talk to Anthony, and he indicated he would be willing to continue in 2024 should the board like to authorize that.
Then there is no dispute.
Well, so we could just do that, or we could do a formal nomination process, but if you'd rather, we could just go to right to, if
Yes.
somebody would like to make a motion to appoint Anthony as vice chair through December 31, 2024.
So moved. I got you this time.
You lost that one, Jody.
Felix, just because you don't want it.
Felix moves it. How about Jody? Do you want to second it?
Yes.
Sure, I'll second it.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
That oh, that's true. Well, you don't have to, but okay.
601, yeah.
All right, we'll let you abstain, Anthony. All right, congratulations, Anthony. That passed 6-0 with 1 abstention.
Very good. There you go.
Hopefully, I'll try to be here all the time, but sometimes it's not possible. All right, well, wow, this is pretty good. We're doing pretty well. I wanted to ask the board's indulgence to go into one more closed session for a completely different reason. I don't think I need to mention why, but I wanted to not only fill the board in on activities of the recent several days, but where we may be going with a certain matter, so, and getting the legal advice of our attorney on that would be helpful. So if somebody would like to make a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Moved by Felix,
Second.
is there, okay, Bob seconds it. And any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So I think the room is already cleared. Debbie, if you could stay, but if we can ask.
Absolutely.
Turn off the broadcast.
Broadcast.
Well, I guess we could, because the only thing we'll be coming back for is to basically just adjourn the open meeting.
Yes, there's no action for the board to take tonight.
No actions, no. So yes, that would be great. So for the audience at home, we will not be taking any actions during the closed session, and we won't do any actions after the end of the closed session either. So thank you all for watching.
Do you want me to stay?
Yes.
Yeah.